Three, two, one, go.
Welcome into PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. Looking forward to this discussion tonight. Bo Smolka, Ravens beat reporter for the PressBox print edition and online all year long. Been with us for, I think, 5 years now, Bo. It's been an interesting time, to say the least, in Ravens history. But let me get a couple sponsor things out of the way, and then we'll actually hear Bo Smolka talk in just a second. But again, we want to talk about his cover story, How Far Lamar, with a question mark, just came out last week, and there's 500 locations around town, including 60 Royal Farm stores. Right now, I want to tell you about expert and award-winning AJ Michaels Heating, AC Plumbing, and Home Performance. They improve your home's energy efficiency and comfort levels. The AC season is still percolating right now. New rebates and discounts are available. More at ajmichaels.com. In addition to the Costas Inn, we've been proud to welcome aboard a new sponsor with PressBox, and that is Superbook Sports. Now's the time to place your baseball bets and your preseason football bets with Superbook Sports. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas, and now you can use promo code StanCharles23, and I'll be honest, you can also use Glenn Clark 23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code StanCharles23, all one word with no spaces. Don't miss out this season. Win some money with Superbook Sports and promo code StanCharles23. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And now we finally hear the dulcet tones of Mr. Bo Smolka. And Bo, I don't mean to mix metaphors, but you dabbled into the other side of things last night with your daughter. You went to Oriole Park and you saw a pretty good game.
I did. We have a 13-game plan. We've had it for years. I just like going to the ballpark. And, it was interesting because Kramer wasn't supposed to pitch.
Yep. And
I've become a big Kramer fan. I know it took him a while to get to where he is, but he's been really good most of the time lately. It was fun. It was a tense game until the 8th, and then they blew it out, which was also good.
Yeah.
I'll say this, because she and I had gone a couple weeks ago, and she said that night they were winning 3-0 against the Dodgers. I think it was the
Dodgers, and they lost that game, right?
When it was when Bautista gave up the Astros.
Okay.
Because Bautista gave up the grand slam to Tucker.
That's
but
right.
She had said, it was 3-0. I hope they don't score anymore. So Bautista comes in and they get the light show and all that. So they didn't score anymore. So it was 3-0. And then the Astros get the grand slam and beat them. So last night she said, all right, they can score as many as they can score.
And she allowed it to happen.
That's right.
To happen. Not to get too far into baseball with you, because we do want to talk Ravens. Dean Kramer's been very interesting. He was definitely more than a throw-in the Manny Machado deal, but the Dodgers historically make a lot of these big trades where they acquire a big name and they throw a bunch of little things at you, and go, hey, take this and take that and look what you got. And Dean Kramer's the only thing they got in that trade that was really worthwhile.
And it took a while for him to get here, right? Because he was awful for a while there, and they thought Yusniel Diaz was going to be the guy, and that never happened. But so he's been really good lately.
All right, let's talk about this guy again on the cover of PressBox once again. Lamar Jackson. The question is, how far Lamar? Bo, we come up with the headlines, and in this case, we kind of assumed what your story was going to be like and about. Do you think that the headline matches your story? How far Lamar?
Well, I think it does, because I think the biggest issue is the way I framed this thing was they've given him, for years, we've heard Lamar Jackson, he's a very good player, but he's never had a real offense that can showcase all of his abilities in terms of passing the ball. He's never had a legitimate group of wide receivers. He's had this offense that in many ways is not, a lot of people don't think can succeed in today's NFL, and that's to be debatable, but that's the thought. And so all these things were kind of limiting him to some extent. That's how the thought went. Well, now they've taken every single one of those things and removed them.
They've like
And
turned
they've
them on their
paid
head.
him.
They've
They
turned
have
them on their
paid
head.
him to go win. And I, as I wrote, for Lamar Jackson's he's always been fascinating to me because he's still an incredibly polarizing guy for whatever reason. Every summer, these polls come out and he's a second or third tier quarterback.
Yeah.
But he's a former league MVP and he's got this team in the playoffs, but he's only won one playoff game in his career. And that is a huge number that just kind of hovers over him until it changes. And so the question now, they've paid him. Eric DeCosta told us after they made the contract, after the contract was signed, we think he's the best quarterback in the NFL, and this contract reflects that.
Yep.
Well, if you're going to pay him to be the best quarterback in the NFL, then you expect him to take you to the Super Bowl. That's what you're paying for. And it's not going to be easy because you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Josh Allen, you got this AFC is ferocious right now. But that's what they're paying him for. How far, Lamar? It's fair. It's a good question because that is the question. That's the question. Can he get them with the new receivers, with the new offense, with the new contract, and with his health? Can he get them as far as they want him to go? We won't know yet, but that's the premise.
Bo, just take me back a couple of years. I want to get your opinion on this. We'll never know. It's like my heavyweight fight that I'll never know how it would have worked out would have been George Foreman against Larry Holmes. We'll never know who would have won that fight. Okay. That year, after the Tennessee loss, which was a bitterly at home on, I think it was a Saturday night, and we lost that game. The next year, I think the team was really hungry and ready to come back. And in short order, you had the injury to J.K. Dobbins, the injury to Gus Edwards, and the failed surgery of Ronnie Stanley. If those three things hadn't happened, do you think that Greg Roman would have been as vilified in Baltimore? I think it's partly that those three players getting hurt took away a fair opportunity for that team to really compete at its highest level.
I mean, that's true. It's true. And I as I wrote in the thing, I mean, this team, for all this idea that we have to have new receivers to be, they were 14-2 with people like Seth Roberts and Willie Snead at wide receiver. 14-2 with those guys. So, I mean, it's possible. I know that Greg Roman every time they lost, usually in a regular season game, certainly in the playoffs, Greg Roman was just a whipping boy. I mean, people could not run him out of town fast enough every time they lost. Those were massive injuries. There's no doubt about it. Stanley, the line was unstable after that. They tried Villanueva. That didn't work. Dobbins and Edwards obviously changed everything. Without them, they changed everything they wanted to do with the run game. And that was Greg Roman's bread and butter. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard. We'll never know. Like you said, with your fight, we'll never know.
Yeah.
But it completely changed that entire season.
It also changed the way John Harbaugh approaches a season and how he plays veteran players in exhibition games. It forever changed that, didn't it?
Well, it did. Remember, Dobbins got hurt. And Dobbins, the plan with Dobbins was only to play that first series against Washington. He just wanted to get the guys to get a little bit of run. And then on the 9th play, I think it was, he goes down and he's out for the rest of the year. And obviously Dobbins hasn't, it's been a long slog for him to get back from that, but it did change. And we haven't seen a lot of the starters play at all this year. And we know some teams do it. And Sean McVay in Los Angeles and other places, there are other coaches that don't do it at all. And if you go back and look at the early Joe Flacco years with John Harbaugh, how he did his starters, back then there were 4 preseason games, remember? Yep. And he used to never play him in the first game, a little bit in the second game. But that third game, many years, those starters played the entire first half.
Yeah.
And then they didn't play it all in the 4th game. But now you've got a situation where he's decided the risk isn't worth the reward.
Not worth it. Yeah.
So we will probably not see any of those guys again in the final game. And that's how that became the Dobbins injury definitely informed him.
No question about it. The question I had for you, it was very interesting the other night. He defended the preseason games in his post-game talk. he went down the road of saying, you folks have never fought for a roster spot in the NFL. You don't think this game is important? You saw some players that are playing for their jobs, and you don't respect that. That was what we saw out of John Harbaugh. Is that really what training camp and the preseason games now really are? They're fully the battles playing out for most of the games.
I mean, I think the training camp overall is getting these guys ready. And I think the joint practices especially. I think if you ask John Harbaugh in May, the most important parts of the summer were going to be the joint practices, because those were the days that the starters were going to go against another team's starters in controlled environment, but they're going to get, wasn't full hitting, but it's going to be legitimate competition for their starting players. Otherwise, they're not playing any preseason games. They're only playing against their own teammates. So those joint practices are a big part of it. John Harbaugh's tone the other night, first of all, I think he's a really competitive guy, and I think he does want to win.
Yeah.
I don't care if you put him out there, he wants to win.
He liked that winning streak. It gave them a badge of honor.
Sometimes he got a little aggravated when people made a bit like mocked it or whatever, but he says, hey, our guys go out to win. You try to win games. I will say nationally, there are people who think that he went over the top to try to win, especially. And that's just not true. When you look at the list of some of the players that played key roles in some of those wins, right? Yeah. I think the reason that streak lasted as long as it did was a credit to them in finding the guys that are like 68 to 90 on the roster, training camp roster, because their 68th to 90th are better than other teams' 68th to 90th. And so in the fourth quarter of those games, that bears out. But the other night, you never played the game. It was feisty and it was testy. I think he was mad they lost the game, but he is right. I'll say this. I agreed with him completely on the sense that, I think he objects to people calling them meaningless.
Yeah.
And you can argue the score is meaningless, but a guy like Keaton Mitchell is an undrafted rookie running back who's probably dreamed his whole life of making an NFL roster. He has really a week and a half left to make a roster, and that game was incredibly important for him.
Yep.
And guys like that. So for specific players, they're very meaningful. A guy that may never make the team again, he may never wear an NFL jersey again after the last preseason game. It's meaningful to that guy. But I think Harbaugh in that moment was just competitive, and they lost at the end, and he was salty.
I agree. I thought it was vintage Harbaugh, and I don't really have a problem with it. I want to get into the new offense, the Todd Monken offense, but I want to go back for 1 second to these battles. If you had to say how many spots would you say are up in the air right now with just a little over, this is the last training exhibition game this Saturday night?
Roster spots, I probably know more than one or two.
Okay.
I think the team knows who they're going to keep. I just think they already know it. I think honestly, when you start training camp, they probably know all but 6 or 7, right? Most of them are taken.
Yeah.
But you guys surprise all the time. We see an undrafted Keaton Mitchell comes in, and I think in my mind, Keaton Mitchell is going to be on the team.
I think
and you might not have known that in May when they signed him as an undrafted rookie. They don't know that then. But take a guy like Ben Cleveland. He's a fascinating one because he's a 3rd-round draft pick. And when Ben Powers left this past spring as a free agent, as starting left guard, the thought was Ben Cleveland's the next guy up. He's the left guard that you drafted 3 years ago for right now. And he has never been in the picture at left guard all summer. And so Who's in the pick?
Who's got that?
I think it's going to be John Simpson,
okay,
who's got some veteran starting experience, and I think he'll get the job over Saleh. They call him the rookie from Oregon. But I think Cleveland's a guy who, is he fighting for a spot still this weekend? Maybe, but I also think it would not surprise me. The Ravens have played him a lot at tackle this summer. And I think Eric DeCosta is wanting teams to see that. And maybe they can move Ben Cleveland for a conditional draft pick, knowing we don't know how he fits in here, but if we can get something for him and not
get a 5th or 6th rounder,
they maybe do that. But there might be an offensive line position to be won this weekend. The cornerback room is just so crazy with all the injuries. It's
break
hard to
it,
project.
break it down for us right now. Who you think?
Well, I mean, it's so hard because we don't know the health of some of these guys. Marlon Humphrey and Pepe Williams are Pepe Williams will start the season on injured reserve.
Okay.
John has said he's had ankle surgery. He probably won't be back till October. He has to be on the 53-man roster procedurally, and then he can get moved to injured reserve the next day, and that makes him eligible to return during the season. If Pepe Williams goes on injured reserve now, he's automatically out the entire year. They don't want that. Marlon Humphrey, I don't think he'll go on injured reserve, but he probably won't be ready for the first week. Jalen Armour-Davis, Arthur Mollett, Rock Yassin, these are all guys that they figure to be in the rotation, and all of them have been hurt. So they brought in Ronald Darby, who's got starting experience. Kevon Seymour is on a fringe player for this team last year. He's gotten a lot of run at cornerback. Brandon Stevens when Brandon Stevens, if the season were to start right now, I think he'd be a starting cornerback. When the Ravens drafted him, he had started his college career as a running back. Then he was a cornerback at SMU. And then when they drafted him, I remember the night they drafted him, Eric DaCosta said, well, he projects as a safety, but he can play corner because he did in college. Well, now they're using him there because they need him there. So he's in there. Ardarius Washington is the short, he's 5'8" on the smaller side, but he's had a great training camp. I think if the season started today, he'd be the starting nickelback. John Harbaugh really likes him. He's active with the ball. At practice on Thursday, he made this leaping interception on a ball in front of intended for Odell Beckham. Really nice play. They love his nose for the ball. So there's like 9 or 10 people out there, and if one of these guys gets hurt, then that changes, or gets re-hurt, I should say. That could change it, but I think they're going to end up keeping 9 or even 10 cornerbacks on that 53-man roster, knowing that at least one of them, Pepe Williams, will go to IR right away. You hope that Marlon Humphrey doesn't have to, but that's still a possibility. They don't think he'll be out as many as 4 weeks. So it's really, really unsettled. Those cornerbacks are coming back. They've come back to practice this week, so they're trending in the right direction, but we'll see. It's been a complication.
What have you seen so far this training camp from David Ajabo? And have you seen any play yet in practice of Jadeveon Clowney? So
I'll say this, Ajabo through OTAs, to me, was very impressive. He looked the part. He was big. He was fast. I'd say he's taken a step back in the sense of training camp and the joint practices and the preseason games. He hasn't been as disruptive as I expected to see right now. I still think they got big plans for him. I think he's got a lot of talent. I think he will be a factor. The first preseason game, one of the first play, and he was one of the few projected starters that actually played in that first game against the Eagles. And one of the first plays of the game, he tried to do a spin move. He got sucked inside, and Mariota basically beat him around that corner where he was supposed to be. So there were a couple other times in that game where he didn't really set the edge. And that was not considered to be his thing. But if you go back to that one game he played last year at Cincinnati, he had a really nice strip sack of Joe Burrow. And so that's the potential that's there for him. It's not, we haven't seen a lot of it yet this summer, but he's out there all the time. He'll fit in the rotation a lot. And I think he will have a big impact. He's been a little quiet over the past 3 weeks or so. Jadeveon Clowney, we saw on practice, he was at practice session on Thursday, not a padded practice or anything. But he looks good. He's a physically imposing guy. And he is considered more of a physical run. He can set the edge against the run. I think we're going to see a lot of him as long as he's healthy. I think we're going to see a lot of him. Yeah. He had said, talking to him, that, when he was in Houston, he made the Pro Bowl 3 straight years. And at that time, his coach was Anthony Weaver, who's now the defensive line coach in Baltimore. So Weaver and Clowney go way back. And John Harbaugh said Weaver was very instrumental in getting Clowney here. And Clowney said today, I asked him, and Clowney said, he loves Weaver's his guy. He loves playing for him. And so I think we'll see Clowney, we'll see Owe, we'll see Ajabo. The 3 of them, I think we'll see rotating a lot. Tyus Bowser, we haven't talked about at all because he's still not playing.
He's still not playing.
And he's a guy that I think he's on the NFI list. They call it non-football injury, which means he got hurt somehow working out unrelated to his Achilles from way back. So we see him out throwing footballs to fans. It's his little pregame tradition. He always does. I haven't seen him walking with crutches or any limp or anything, but he's not practicing yet, and the season starts in 2 weeks. It wouldn't surprise me to see him start the season on that NFI list, which also would back him up 4 games. But now they have Clowney, which makes that a little more doable. They can always use Malik Harrison as an outside linebacker if they get in a pinch. But the Clowney addition with Ajabo and with Owe, that has a potential to be a really nice 3-person rotation.
I got to take a quick break for a sponsor. You sit tight. Got to tell people, and then I want to come back and we'll dig into for 7 minutes or so, 8 minutes on Todd Monken and the new offense. All right.
All right.
Bo Smolka continues with us, but right now I have to tell you about some place that has continued with us, or with me personally, since the mid 90s. That's the Costas Inn, located at 4100 North Point Boulevard. It's crab season right now. Well, for a lot of people, it's crab season year round, but you got to have a plan if you want to go to the Costas Inn and eat crabs. Same thing anywhere. Not every place has great selection of crab sizes, price points. Call 410-477-1975. Make a plan on how you're going to attack those crabs before the summer is out. The Costas Inn. They've been there for about 52, 53 years. I think they know what they're doing. The Costas Inn. Please tell them Stan the Fan sent you. Again, that phone number to make your crab reservations, 410-477-1975. And I know Bo is probably watering. Your mouth is probably watering, Bo, with that. Want to talk to you a little bit about Todd Monken and his offense. Can you break it down what we're going to see in the early going here with this team? What's it about?
I think it's about spreading the field vertically and horizontally. He mentioned that. I think they will take deep shots from time to time, but he also said he wants to spread the field horizontally and create space for his receivers. And think about that. If you put, say, Odell Beckham and Zay Flowers on one side, Rashad Bateman on the other side, maybe Mark Andrews on the slot on that same side.
Something's got to give.
Now you've really spread that defense. You can't sleep on any of those guys. And by the way, that should really help J.K. Dobbins too.
Yeah.
Because that takes a whole bunch of defenders out of the box. Remember, these teams were putting 9 guys in the box against the Ravens last year.
Yep.
And you can't do that with this team the way so that's his premise, is we're going to spread them out. We're going to try to get guys to make, sometimes it'll be short catches and gain yardage after the catch. We'll see much more 3 and 4 receiver spread sets. We will see, I think, a lot more bunch formations with 3 receivers bunched on the line of scrimmage on the left or on the right. And in that first preseason game, they showed one of those bunch formations to the left, and then Jackson threw a touchdown to Duvernay to the right. So Monken's creative that way, but his idea is get these, they're fast, they're possession receivers, get them in space where they can win one-on-one and move after the catch. And Zay Flowers has done that all summer. He's been one of the more impressive players I've seen in all the training camps I've covered. But having said that, he is a rookie. We're going to dial it down a little bit, but he has been really tough. He looks like exactly what the Ravens wanted in this offense when you see him catch and run, right? They were one of the worst teams in the league last year in terms of yardage after a catch. And I just think Flowers is going to create yardage after the catch.
What does he do that Hollywood Brown ultimately didn't do? Where is he better?
Part of it, I think, is Brown was, we were talking about this at the practice today. Brown was never quite right once his foot got hurt. And I don't know how much he could have cut or planted or done the kinds of things. But Zay Flowers, the way he cuts and he stops and he gets low and gets low in a route and cuts to the left or cuts to the right or cuts back, and he makes these moves that gets the defender moving one way and then he'll cut the other way, and soon he's got 2 yards of separation. Now he catches the pass. Not only does he catch the pass, he catches the pass with a yard of separation between him and the other the defender, And now he's got time to make another move to fake that guy out. And I've seen that over and over this summer. With Marquise Brown, it never quite worked that way. And part of it was I don't think he ever felt comfortable making those kind of cuts on his foot when he was hurt. Zay Flowers is built bigger. He just physically looks stronger. I think he's tougher on contested catches than Marquise Brown was. And I think, at straight line speed, probably Marquise Brown is faster. But Zay Flowers can get another gear and get open on defenders because, again, if he does a little double move, these defenders have seen him enough now to know they have to come up on him when he makes that cut. They think he's going to come back to the ball. Now he turns and goes, and he's got another gear. But the way he moves, and I'm impressed with the way he makes the contested catch when there is one to be made. But he's going to work himself open a lot, and it's also he's going to work himself open in areas of the field where Lamar Jackson likes to throw. And so I think that's why we're going to see him fed a lot.
We all know what Mark Andrews can do. Isaiah Likely and this guy who was hurt last year, Charlie Kohler, are they going to be parts of this offense and important pieces?
They'll be parts of it for sure. I think a big part of it is how much. First of all, one part of it is how healthy do the receivers stay, and that's a big question. Bateman hasn't been able to be healthy. Beckham is coming off a major injury, although he has looked terrific so far this summer. And, Duvernay was hurt late last year. And can he stay healthy? Can all these guys stay healthy? If they're all healthy, I don't know how much the tight ends are going to factor. Mark Andrews is absolutely going to factor. I still think Mark Andrews is going to lead this team in receptions again, because whenever the play breaks down,
Lamar's
Jackson
looking
looks
for Mark
Andrews.
Andrews.
It's always been that way. I think it always will be that way. And Andrews is a tough guy to cover. He's going to get open. Likely and Kolar are both complementary tight ends. I think there'll be times they use two tight end sets, and Likely is a guy that can kind of play as a slot receiver almost. He's a bigger target. They're good. They can move well. Kolar we haven't seen much of, right? He got hurt last year. Kolar was actually drafted before Likely by about 10 or 12 picks.
Yep.
But then he had sports hernia surgery last summer. That set him back to about Halloween. It took him a while to get back, and he played a couple games. But they'll factor, I think. But it'll be, I think, for the most part, it will be Andrews and the receivers to the extent that it can be. And I think we'll see Likely, and I think we'll see some of Kolar.
I've got two more questions for you, Bo, and then we'll let you get out of here. One of them has to do, the other night, Joe Buck, who was doing the game on, on ESPN, he's now the Monday Night Football announcer, and they were covering the game. And Troy Aikman were doing the game, and they talked about, don't kid yourself, Todd Monken, his running backs did a lot of the damage at Georgia. Now, I know that's not with Lamar Jackson quarterbacking, but he had a pretty good quarterback there. Are these running backs, are they going to be integral parts of this offense? And you alluded to the space. Are we going to see a little bit of screen passing or out in the flat?
Well, a converted screen pass would be a nice thing to see, because it happened like once in 7 years. But I think we'll see more of them as receivers than we have in the past. I think there will be a factor. I think Justice Hill might be a guy we see more of as a running back than we have in the past. For the same reason, I think he's a guy. I'll give Justice Hill a lot of credit. Justice Hill, who is considered to be the number 3 back on this team. Well, all spring, J.K. Dobbins was sitting out effectively. Gus Edwards was injured and working his way back. And Justice Hill was just out there grinding day in, day out. And I think Monken appreciates that. I think he's good, and I think he's well suited for what Monken wants to do. He's also a pretty decent pass blocker for his size. So I think Justice Hill has a chance to be a big part of this. Dobbin, but I think, as I said, I think they want to spread the offense, which is going to spread the defense, which is going to create running lanes for these guys. And I think they will see more of Dobbin, more of all the guys really as receivers. So I think all 3 of the running backs will factor. I will say, Todd Monken, the day he got hired and the day John Harbaugh hired him, they both said Todd Monken is really good at getting the most out of what he has, right? what he has is a guy that can run at quarterback better than any guy ever has done it.
Yep.
So they would be crazy to get away from the RPOs and get away from Jackson running the ball, right? People say he'll get hurt again. He'll get hurt again. Well, again, he didn't get hurt running. Both his injuries did not come while running. And I understand the sentiment. He's more likely to get hurt running, but we've seen RPOs this summer a little bit on the practice field. They absolutely will not completely get away from that. Jackson running the ball will be part of it. But I think they will find those running backs will be a part of I think they're going to spread the offense and really, I think J.K. Dobbins is well suited for what they want to do because the way he can cut back and hit a lane, and the lanes will be there if they spread the receivers out. And Gus Edwards is a guy that I don't know how much he'll factor, or Patrick Ricard for that matter, because it's a different look for Patrick Ricard now.
Yeah,
I think he'll play. He'll certainly be part of it. I think they will. There are days there'll be times he comes in there and he's the lead back, and they try to go strong on one side, and he can still catch a pass out of the backfield and be a load. But I think the running backs will factor for sure. But Lamar Jackson's still going to carry the ball.
Does Melvin Gordon make the team?
What's that?
Gordon, does he make the team?
Who?
Melvin Gordon.
I do not think Melvin Gordon makes the team.
Okay.
My thought is,
the
problem is, I think they're going to keep the three I've mentioned, Edwards, Dobbins, and Justice Hill, and I think they're going to keep
Mitchell.
The rookie, Keaton Mitchell. He's got good speed, and he can also return kicks. And the other thing to keep in mind here is Dobbins, Edwards, and Devin Duvernay are all set to be free agents next year. So having a young guy in the room that maybe you can project out a couple of years, and Keaton Mitchell's earned it. He's looked good. So I think Mitchell stays and Gordon goes.
All right. Last question for you is, it's been controversial at times, and I don't do a deep dive into how games are won and lost. I don't know how to do it exactly, but I know that he's got one of the greatest weapons in the history of the National Football League in Justin Tucker. And yet the last 2 or 3 seasons, John Harbaugh is going with the analytics. And there are certain times I go, I like it here. I like going for it. But boy, when you put the best weapon in football, and it seems like it's only that one time and you don't make it and he doesn't get the 3 points, but sometimes it's 2 or 3 times in a game, and that could be 9 points. Are we going to see more Justin Tucker this year, or do you think John Harbaugh sticks to his new guns?
I think John Harbaugh sticks to his guns. That's how he coaches. That's how he is. And I know it drives people crazy when they have, say, 4th and 1 at the 37, and Justin Tucker, that is totally within his range.
Yep.
Or even the 27 for that matter. And they go for it and they don't get it. And then they give up what should be 3 points, or we know a couple of years ago, they kept going for 2 to try to win a game instead of kick for the tie. And John Harbaugh has reasons why he wanted. One day we were out of cornerbacks. We don't want to go to overtime. But this is who Harbaugh is. There's nothing. He's done it for 12, 15 years. It's not going to change.
Hey, Bo, thanks again for being part of Press Box. You've done a great job for us. Again, the cover story, How Far Lamar. It's available at 500 locations, 60 Royal Farm stores in and around Baltimore. And it's also available at PressBoxOnline.com. Love the way you weaved in Brian Baldinger and Kurt Warner. What, did Glenn hook you up with Kurt Warner?
Yeah, he did. Kurt Warner was terrific. I mean, he was a great person to talk to. I knew Kurt Warner. I knew it didn't strike me until I started talking to him that he too won the MVP in his second year. And then the question is like, what comes next? And so, he's in the media now. He's very insightful. He was terrific.
Yeah. It really added both the guys you used were really insightful. We'll talk soon, and go O's and go Ravens. Thank you, Bo.
All right. Thank you, Stan.
Appreciate it. Again, we've been brought to you by Superbook Sportsbook. Let me make sure I got that. Superbook Sports, and also by the Costas Inn. But again, expert and award-winning AJ Michaels Heating, AC, Plumbing, and Home Performance. They've also sponsored our Zoom. I'll be back Monday at 4:00 with Luke Jackson and Ross Grimsley. Have a great weekend ahead, and go O's. Bye.